Awesome. Okay, great. So let's start. So welcome to this session. I'm Natasha. I'm from the LX Lab, and I've got a couple of my colleagues here in the session too. Nat's here with us, and also, do I have a second page? Oh, Kate, there you are. Hello.
Hello,
everyone. So today, if my computer agrees, basically for the next hour, and sometimes the session runs like pretty quickly because it's quite straightforward. I like to keep it short, and then we've got time for any questions or discussions and stuff like that. So we'll go through the what, the why, how, and when of H5P, basically. So first, starting with the what. What is this thing called H5P? Well, it's an authoring tool that lets you create, share, and reuse content solely with your browser. And as a HTML5 package, or H5P, it is compatible across devices without the need for plugins, which is handy. And it essentially provides a collection of templates which you can tailor to your needs. However, the features that really make H5P shine is the ability to combine content types together, kind of in a sequence, creating advanced content types like branching scenarios, and the ease of sharing and collaborating on the content that you actually create. And for Canvas users, it's particularly handy because it's actually integrated in the LMS itself. But the only kind of a small thing that's not fully there is it's not integrated with the Grade Center. So it doesn't have any advanced kind of tracking capabilities. But even for those that aren't in Canvas, you can still use this and actually embed it in Blackboard, and we'll show you how you can do that as well in the session. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to walk through a few selected content types just to show you what the examples look like. So on this page here, we can actually see this is on the H5P website itself, and it has a really nice gallery of all the content types. And a lot of them you'll see are probably familiar to you from other kind of educational tools. So we've got like dialogue cards, drag and drop, fill in the blanks, hotspots. So there's quite a lot there. We don't have every single one of these items enabled in the UTS instance, mainly because not all of them are accessible, but we still have a lot. So we're going to have a look at some specific examples. So this one here is a mark the words type example. You can adapt this really in a variety of ways, whether it's really assessing recall and recognition, or even pretty complex analysis, depending on what your content is. So concept is pretty simple. The user will select the correct terms, and they can check their answer and get instant feedback. And then you can also build in the answers in there as well. Jump to the next example. This one is quite useful too. It's a text-based accordion. And it's a good idea to use this option when you have complex information for specific subgroups in your class. So that way it'll keep non-relevant information hidden from the students that don't need to see it. And the only limitation with this content type at the moment is that it can only contain text, but no other rich content. So you can't really put videos or images or anything else in there. So if I click on the arrows, you see just that kind of nice, simple accordion. Awesome. So this one here is an example of a dialogue card. So this is a pretty common format, might be known as flip cards or flashcards. And for this particular option, you can have images, audio, or only text. So it's up to you. You can decide which combination you need or want. And it's nice and simple with the flip, and you can have a series of cards. So again, that one can be pretty handy depending on what your content is. So this one here is quite useful, I think. It's the course presentation content type. Let me just zoom out so it's just formatted a bit. And okay, there we go. Good. So this one, if you're familiar with programs like Articulate Storyline or Adobe Captivate, the course presentation content type essentially gives you a similar end product. So that is, you can have several slides and you can add various combinations of all the content from H5P on each of the slides. And then you can see along the bottom of the presentation here, that's how you can navigate from slide to slide. And the ones that have a little circle on them as well, I think indicate where there's some kind of activity for the user to engage with. And it also has a menu that you can enable or disable depending on how you want them to navigate this activity type. So this one is really quite, it is really quite versatile, and it is nice for packaging things together, especially when you want to use a few content types all together. And finally, probably the most advanced, one of the most advanced content types is the branching scenario. So this one will let you create basically adaptable learning activities, or like a choose your own adventure type of activity. And like the course presentation, you've got different content types that you can use as the option that the student gets taken to depending on their choices. Oops. So I'll zoom in on this so you can see a bit better as well. Oops. Actually zoom out. So if I start the game in this case, I've got a introduction slide, some information, and then I can proceed. So kind of review the client information for this nursing scenario. Then it plays a video. And then once you've finished watching that, you press proceed, and it gives you a prompt of, you know, after this intro scenario, how are you going to respond?
The people at the hospital were worried about you and asked me to visit you. Please open.
And then depending on your selection, it gives you another video. But then it gives you feedback as well, depending on where you've decided, which track you've decided to go down as well, which I think is quite nice. But you can see probably with a content type like this, you would likely need to do quite a bit of pre-planning for something like this. But, you know, once you've set up this kind of content item, you know, you've got it for quite a while, and it's probably quite high value for students, depending on what you're trying to assess or get across to them. So if we go back now, that's kind of a bit of the actual content types themselves. So I like to go into a kind of a small section on why you would actually use H5P. Ooh. And first, it might be stating the obvious, but I like to say H5P is a great tool because internet. And what I mean here is that the medium that we're working in is inherently one of hypertext and hypermedia, which means that there's a really great opportunity to work beyond static content. And this is valuable because our brains like novelty. And as an extension, we can use these activities to then help guide cognitive processing. The reason why it's also useful is because you can keep the content in line on your page in Canvas or Blackboard, rather than having to have them click out away somewhere else and then come back, and it kind of makes the experience a little bit fragmented. And it also helps you control the pacing of the content and also provide the user a bit of control with what they get to actually interact with and proceed through content, depending on the item that you use. So all these features together are really helping to reduce the students' cognitive effort or load, which is always valuable. And fortunately for content creators, this tool provides ready-made templates. All we need to do really is populate the activity with content. And finally, as we do that, it's a great way to make exercises with built-in explanatory feedback for the students or the users. Most of the content types have a lot of fields where you can really give extra info or tips for the user. And when you can't necessarily have synchronous classes, this is a really good advantage as well. So the other thing is, I know that you academics love a good conceptual framework. So it's fitting that we also have the guiding principles for building your subject. It's kind of a nice crossover because a lot of these principles and what you can do with H5P, they kind of lend themselves to each other. Here on the screen, I just have 4 of the 8 types of guiding principles for building your subject as we all kind of go through the LXT process. And the full details of these guiding principles are over on the LX resources site. And you'll have the slides after this that we send over to you. All the links and all the information will be in there for you, so you can easily check out whatever you'd like to see. So the next part is getting into the meaty part, which is how exactly to use H5P, a few tips about things to keep in mind, I suppose. And yeah, this section has 3 main stops. The first is about how to actually access H5P. Then we have a brief pause, and then we look at the interface itself. So for those in Canvas, if you haven't used H5P before, the following steps will actually activate or help you activate your account. If you haven't yet done this and you are in Canvas, feel free to follow along here and type in the chat or unmute your mic and let us know if you're having any issues, and we'll help you out. So basically, you can go to canvas.uts.edu.au, log in and head to your sandpit. And once you go to your sandpit, go to any page or create a new page and jump into edit mode, which is what you see on the screen here, the page just in edit mode. And if we zoom in a little bit into this rich content editor, the toolbar contains this downward pointing blue V, and that's also known as the external tools icon. And when you select it, H5P will appear as a menu item. And so if this is the first time you're accessing it, once you click that, it will prompt you to authenticate, and I think it sends you an email for you to enter a code. And once you've done that once, the next time you go through this sequence, for instance, now if I were to click on the H5P item, it opens up the next window here. which is the initial H5P interface. So I'll just pause quickly. I don't know if anyone was following along or activating anything in Canvas or needs to, but it looks like we're all pretty good from what I can see. If you're in Blackboard, so I'm not sure how many of you are in Blackboard, can you add PDFs to H5P or Canvas? The question we had just there in the chat.
I was thinking for like the course presentation, if you wanted to have a series of PDFs, can you have a different PDF on each slide?
Potentially, we'd need to double check. We can, when I go into build an example, we can make a little detour and see if we can attach some PDFs in the course presentation and see if it works.
Great,
yeah, just going to write that down. 1 sec.
I was playing around with it yesterday and I couldn't figure it out.
Awesome. Okay. So if you are in Blackboard, you can access H5P directly. People in Canvas, you can also access H5P with this alternate method that I'll be showing you now. So you can basically go to it using a direct URL. So if you type in uts.h5p.com, then that will take you to that same initial interface that we saw when we accessed it through Canvas. You're just kind of going directly to the portal using this method, which can make editing and creating your content a little bit easier. And if you are a Blackboard user and you haven't ever logged into H5P at all, then just let us know, because we will have to first activate your account before you can log in using this URL. So you can either hang around today during the session, or you can log a Service Connect ticket. It doesn't take very long at all. But now a brief pause. So I've touched on the reasons why you would use H5P, including we've got LXT guiding principles for teaching in Canvas. But the final consideration before you build your content is accessibility. So fortunately, many, if not all of the content types in H5P, in our instance at UTS, are accessible. But as with most cases, the final product still depends on the content creator's awareness. So we don't have time to cover the full accessibility kind of guides today, but we do have a lot of really excellent articles and practical how-tos on the LX resources site. And we also have quite a few workshops as well on this topic for creating accessible content. So with that in mind, let's kind of keep it in the forefront of our minds, and we can consider a few handy tips about the H5P authoring interface. So these are the kind of tips I like to tell people when you're building with H5P. So basically, the way you're operating in this with this tool is working top to bottom, and any fields with a star are required. Each content type has a tutorial and an example at the very top. So that's really great if you're unsure how exactly the content type will look in the end, or how to build with it. That documentation is always right at the very beginning. And then details like sharing, collaboration, and publishing, all those kind of settings, they all come at the end. So you don't need to think about them really as you're working on the content. So we're going to switch over to the browser, and I'll build out an example just to see kind of how the interface works and fill in information, and I'll just highlight a few things as we go. Oops, so I'm just going to switch through. Okay, so hopefully you should be able to see the H5P website. Right, yeah. Okay, great. The example I like to build is it's a simple guess the answer content type. But just looking at the interface here, this is when you access it directly through the portal. So that's the direct URL. You've got links to your content collections on the left, adding your content, new content right at the top. And there's also another link on the top right as well. I'm just going to hit add content. And then this prompt has basically the list of all the content types. You can either scroll through them using this list, or you can directly type in the name of the item that you want to use in this field. So I'll say, I type in, I find the guess the answer content type. So you can see at the top, you always have your links to the tutorial and the example. And already starting off with the like required fields, you've got the little red stars. So this one was, and so what you encounter in the interface as well, let's see, just zoom in, that's a bit better. You'll often encounter these dark gray boxes, and they'll have the twirl down arrow on the left-hand side. So that lets you expand that item, and generally these dark gray boxes have your multimedia enhancement options, and usually they're optional, but they do kind of help enhance the item. So once I twirl that down, now I have the option to add a kind of a piece of multimedia. So for this case, I'm going to add a video. And for video sources, again, you'll be prompted with the kind of formats that you can use. I believe in this case, when we press add, you'll see you can use a YouTube link. You can also use Vimeo. And then you can also actually upload a source file if you have one. Yeah.
If you have international students and you link a YouTube video through here, will they be able to see it?
The safe bet is possibly not, especially if they're not using the VPN. So if they were using the UTS VPN, they probably could. But it's best, yeah, if you have international students, try to use the source video file if you can. And we can always test out any other video providing platforms potentially.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Because it's still being served by the YouTube server, yeah, it's likely that it will be blocked.
I assume that's the case. I was just checking.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to paste in the URL that I do have here. Oops, the one, I think so. Set that. And you can see the those following gray boxes as well. So they're all optional multimedia enhancements. So for visuals, you can specify if you want a specific poster image to show, and tweak some of these settings if you don't want the student necessarily to control the player controls. I'm just going to leave those at default. Playback, it's good to leave these ones at default generally. accessibility, if it's a source, if you had your source video file, this is where you can actually add the caption file or the subtitle file. And what I quite like about H5P is a lot of the interface. You can actually customize the buttons and the labels that appear. So in this case, for this content type, you have, say, the description, the video, and then a button that the user will click to reveal some information. And currently, the default, it says, click to see the answer. But I can customize that and add some extra text. So I'll say, and then we'll see when we preview the item where that change appears. So yeah, descriptive solution label. So solution text, once they click the button. And then finally, down the bottom, you have a few optional settings as well. These are kind of, usually you don't need to dig into these as well. So we'll just have a look at them though. So this is an example of what I was saying as well. A lot of the fields and default text that appears, you can customize, which can be useful depending on what you're trying to achieve sometimes. So like for the when the video is loading, you can even specify what kind of text appears. Let's see what else we have. Awesome. And so now that we've reached the end of the content itself, you have this final section at the bottom that has your publishing and sharing details. So depending on where you would like to embed your content, you've got these three settings here. So unpublished is kind of hidden or not active. I think the default setting is always on this middle option, which is protected. That means it can be inserted into the LMS. Oops. And then the public option is so that you can even embed it or link to it without needing a user to go into an LMS, which is useful. And that final option is what Blackboard users actually need to enable to be able to embed it into their site. So if you're in Canvas, you can leave it on this middle option. But if you're in Blackboard, you do need to use that public option. So for this case, I'm actually going to set it to public. And what happens is once you save this content type, you'll be able to retrieve the URLs that you need to be able to share with people, or the embed code that you need to use in Blackboard. And it'll appear underneath this section. But I'll show you there are a few ways to actually quite easily get the URLs. Then you have folders as well. So most of you as well will have, let's see. For this particular setting, actually, it's tricky for me to know because I've got a super user status in H5P, but you will either have, I think, your own folders. Let's see. Okay, just one sec. I had a question from Renu. When you get URLs, if you wanted to, and yeah, you can get URLs even if you're not in Blackboard, and if you want to share it externally or share it to someone that's not in Canvas or any other site, pretty much. Hopefully that answered the question. Awesome. Okay, so you will have folders where I think you can save your, let's see. Okay, great. If yours just says root folder, I'm assuming that this section is for your own organization, potentially, because there's another area where you will actually see some folders. So that's where we can kind of compare actually a little better. I think it's in, we'll jump over collaborators for now. I'll go to sharing.
Yeah, the only one that I have is the one content I tried to set up already.
Oh yeah, in the folder section.
Yeah, so in the folder section, it shows up as the TOD lecture, which I tried to set up earlier. And that's
Okay.
the only thing I have in there, so I don't have subjects or anything like that.
Okay, that sounds about right. And then if we go over to the sharing tab, this is where I think it gets a bit interesting. And so if we click pick folders to share in, you'll see that all the faculties and then all the schools inside the faculties have their own folders. So you can actually decide to publish your content in one of these folders, and you're kind of creating a shared pool of content items. And that way, if someone else sees your example and wants to do something like that, they can actually clone the example. And similarly, if you see someone else has created something, you can even browse through those and then clone the content type to adapt it for your site as well. And then I'll just jump back to collaborators, because it's really easy to bring a colleague in to help you work on a content item. You type in their email in this space, and it adds them as a collaborator. And then when you're in your H5P interface, on that left-hand side, there's usually manage content and then content shared with me. And once you hit that area, you'll see any content item that someone has added you as a collaborator on. Can you add a collaborator that is external? I can't recall if we tried this. I think they need to have a H5P account in UTS, I'm pretty sure, because it uses, if I type in Kate Ayrton, did I spell you that? Yeah. Indicate if it comes up for you.
Should come up, maybe.
Oh,
maybe not.
Oops.
Use.
That's strange. Hey?
Maybe take the dot out.
Oh yeah.
Could be Catherine. Try Catherine. Sorry. Anyway, or Nat. Try Nat.
There he is.
There he is.
Yeah. That one. Yeah. So yeah, so I'm not sure why you weren't coming up, Kate. Yeah, might have not been activated or something. That's all right. But there's Nat in there. Can casuals have an account? I believe they can. I don't see why they wouldn't. Trying to think, but we can always just confirm that with. Have you heard anything on that, Kate?
I was just thinking about that because I'm a casual too, but then maybe that's why it's up.
Oh, really? Okay.
But I would have thought yes. So I think we'll just confirm that.
Okay. Yeah, Fiona has said actually yes, they can. Okay, thanks, Fiona. Yeah. So yeah, so that's quite nifty. Then we had sharing, that was the shared folders. And the interesting thing as well with H5P is they're actually in the process, they're about to launch a global shared open educational resources hub where people around the world can actually publish the content that they've created in H5P. So that's going to be launching sometime this year, pretty soon. I think they're almost finished. So I'm pretty excited to see what people around the world are doing with H5P, and even just to borrow and adapt ideas from what other people are making. And the final setting, generally you don't need to adjust the LTI settings. You can leave that blank unless there was a specific reason why you needed to resize it. So now once I press save, I'll show you a bit about retrieving those URLs. So we'll hit save. Actually, we'll have a look at the actual item itself. So I'll zoom out a little bit. So here's our content type. So we've got a prompt at the top, the YouTube video. Then you can see below this button that I mentioned where you can actually customize the text that appears. And once I click on that, it'll reveal whatever I filled in there. So to retrieve that URL, you've got a few places. If you look at the top left here, I'll zoom in again. Oops. You can see there's some icons to indicate there are multiple authors, and then there's a little globe icon that says public. And if you click on that globe, it brings up that area that has all the links and the publishing settings. And you see below, if you use this external link URL, for instance, if I paste it in the chat. So if anyone now in this session clicks on the link I posted in that chat, you should be able to see the example I built directly in a web page. And then on that next option, embed code, this is the code that users in Blackboard, you need to copy this code. And then when you go over in Blackboard, you can paste it in the content editor. You will need to be in HTML mode, and we can walk you through exactly where to go. But you have them quite easily accessible right here, which is nice. So once you copy, you click on it and it just automatically copies it to your clipboard. You can press update. And we're back to the example. So alternatively, if we use the folder on the top left to go back to our content, we'll look at, we're in my content again. And for this example here, again, you can click on this globe icon, I think even here. Yeah, all the published settings. But I think using that little globe icon is quite handy because they have it in a few different spots around. And if you wanted to edit that item again, you just hit that pencil icon, the edit icon, and it'll take you back to your editing mode here. So I quite like the interface of H5P. I don't know if it's because I'm used to it now, but I think it's fairly clear with how they set things out with view on one side, oops, and then edit just to the left of that. Let's see. Okay, so I'll go back here, and we'll just check out that the question that you had about adding a PDF to a course presentation. So I'm going to go to add content. Type in course presentation. Okay, so what do we have? Zoom out a bit. So you can see, so here's our kind of initial slide. How do you embed the creative content within Canvas? Okay, Renu, just after this, I'll show you how you would be embedding content in Canvas. So you've got your slide, and along the top, you have all the different items that you can add on that slide. If I hit the drop down as well, there's a few more content items as well. Let's see. I'm thinking, because you can't really use an iframe. Link or text. Yeah, this is a good question. So it looks like you can't, at least not easily, like if you had the PDF shared somewhere else on a public URL, you could potentially add it into here.
Yeah, I guess, is there a different tool that should be used? So my thought process was that when I'm creating the modules in UTS Online, I have a lot of smaller videos. And last semester, the students asked me to also upload the slides because they like to take notes on they're still paper people. So they like to print and take their notes on paper for at least 25 or 30% of the class.
Okay.
So I uploaded those, but then the module becomes quite long. And so my thought process was if I could do it in a horizontal way, it wouldn't make the module look so thick, especially because I'm teaching blocks. So for example, day 2 of the block, which is now over the course of a week, has all the module contents for that day of the block.
Okay.
So it gets to be quite cumbersome if you doing everything vertically. So I was trying to find a way to do it horizontally where they could access the
And do the PDFs need to be separate items, or could they be, for example, if you zip them up into?
It could be one, but the students really liked them being separate because then they could go in and just. Oh, you mean no? In Canvas, at least I couldn't figure out how it said to attach a file, and then that just became one line item. It didn't allow me to attach all 5 in one line item, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, because I think the only way you could do it is say you had a folder and inside that you had the 5 or 10 PDFs.
Yeah.
If you zipped that folder up so that it's one little package.
Either because some of my students don't know how to use zip.
Okay.
So yeah, I went through that whole process last term and trying to, and ultimately the only thing I could figure out that worked was to individually put each of them up. So that way they can have, one screen with the PDF on it and one screen with the video on it. And then they could either type or they could print it and then they could handwrite them out. But in the end, I couldn't find a way that didn't make the Canvas look super clunky. So I was hoping that the H5P would have like a reader option where I could sort of flip them or something like that.
Okay, there's 2 more things actually I thought of while you're talking as well. One could be you could upload all the files on a folder in OneDrive.
They are in OneDrive.
Okay, so you can actually share that folder URL with your class, or you can set it to only people in UTS, and then you could add that link, that URL link, as your kind of single item that students click on, and then they have a nice folder of all the files.
Okay.
That could be a pretty good easy one. And
can that be done here where the URL is in that course content? I don't understand.
You wouldn't need to use H5P for that at all.
Oh, okay.
But that would help the problemo. Yeah. And we just had a question about support for LaTeX or MathML. I can't remember if we tested this or not in one of the examples. Let me just see. So I'll cancel out of this.
While you're doing that, Natasha, Peniel, when you said you had a PDF that was linked to like a video, you could put a hotspot link on top of the video in H5P so that students could watch the video, and at a certain time or even at the beginning of the video, you could have that hotspot link to the PDF in, say, OneDrive, and they could click on that to access the PDF link without having to like find it anywhere else if it was linked to that, like if you had a video and a PDF that was together.
Okay. I might have to play around with that and see how that works.
Yeah, it's basically if you just watch a video, like you upload your video, then as an interactive video activity type, you could just add a hotspot link on top of the beginning of it if you wanted, and it could be like the link could just say slides or slides download or something.
Okay.
Okay, so from a quick glance here, kind of getting mixed info here. Okay, so apparently there is an option for LaTeX. I'm not sure about MathML, but I'd need to confirm that for you actually, because I'm not sure if it's switched on.
Natasha, just letting you know I'm heading off to the library meeting now. So
No problem. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, I'll pick up.
And just letting everyone know, we do have some other H5P things, which I'll let Natasha know about. But tomorrow we have another tutorial that I'm running. It's not really a tutorial, it's more a workshop on preparing or planning your videos for next session. We have low numbers at the moment, but if anyone is interested, there is a workshop tomorrow on planning videos if you'd like a refresher or want to learn how to make some videos for your session next semester.
Awesome, thanks, Nat. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, on math, because I don't think that there are a few math content items, but I don't think that they were enabled at UTS in our instance. But I'll find out because I just can't remember what the kind of suggested solution was. Yeah, Canvas has LaTeX, but UTS Online does not. Yeah. And I think even the LaTeX in Canvas wasn't very accessible. I think that's what was tricky potentially, but Phil in our team, he knows all the details on the LaTeX stuff. So, so that one doesn't work there. Oops. Because yeah, I didn't see any support necessarily, but okay. And they were the main questions. I don't know if there was, were there any other questions in the content types themselves? Otherwise we can jump to Canvas and I can show you how you would embed a content type when you're in Canvas. So, whoops. Okay, so this is the direct portal. You can build and create your content item in here. And once you've finished doing that, you don't need to do anything else. You don't necessarily need to, if you're in Canvas, you don't need to grab the URL. So we'll navigate to Canvas. I'm just going to go to my sandpit. And create a new page. Okay, so basically, in most places in Canvas where you access the rich content editor, you'll be able to access H5P. So for instance, on a page here, and I'm going to click on edit to enter edit mode. And again, if you see the rich content editor, that downward pointing blue V, just going to zoom in. So if we hit that and select H5P. So this is giving us access to our H5P account or the H5P portal. And I can see the content item that I made here, the second item, and they'll have the insert button. So it's as simple as that. Find the item that you created, press insert. It'll take a moment to load, but there it is on the page. I'm just going to hit save. I'll zoom out again. Oh, what is it doing? This is a bug I have not seen before. Can you see that scrolling endlessly? Okay, I have no idea why it's doing that. It's pretty funny. Okay, oops. Oh, okay, it stopped. Oh my gosh. Okay, this is a good bug. Okay. So usually it doesn't do this. Okay, got a question here. If we...
So, yeah. Question
oh, yeah,
from
is that you,
Renu?
Renu? Yeah. If I wanted to create H5P content from within Canvas, where do I start from within Canvas? Sure, that's a good question. So again, I'll jump into edit mode. Does it end up in your H5P account if you created it in Canvas? Yeah. So whether you create it here using the portal or direct URL, you're still accessing the same account. So I'll go back to that blue V, hit H5P. It may be the browser I'm using. It's a slightly experimental-ish browser. Okay. Let's try that again. Okay. So yeah, you could hit add content right here. And you're going to see that same interface within this pop-up. And if I went, say, oops, there it is, course presentation. The thing is, for most of the content types, if you're creating it here, then you do have a smaller area to kind of build and work in, because it kind of puts you in this frame. Some of the content types do have an option that says kind of open in new tab, so that you've got a bit more space to work. I think the branching scenario does that. I mean, you can still work in it, but it can feel a little squishy sometimes. So you have all the same prompts, the same interface, just in this kind of more restricted page. Same settings and everything as well. And so at the end, you've just got the option of save and insert straight away once you've finished. Yeah, and once you have done that as well, it's in your account. You're just accessing it through Canvas. Okay, so I think we covered most of those good how questions. Then we just have a little bit to jump back into the presentation and finish up, and then we can kind of take any questions or try any other examples that you might want to see. So I'll just switch again. Oops. Okie dokie. I'm just going to grab some water. Okay, awesome. 1 second. Oops. Okay. The final part is when to use H5P. Some kind of general thoughts that might be useful. Sometimes I think it can be difficult to decide exactly where you might use something like H5P. But the kind of questions you might want to begin with are if you have certain threshold concepts in your subject, if you have known topic areas that give your students trouble, do you have some topic areas that have a lot of different examples that you might want to kind of have set up beforehand that you can reuse? Is your content text heavy? Do your students need to identify features and structures visually? There's kind of a bunch of these questions that you can have a look at if you wanted kind of just some general prompts rather than kind of thinking about it on your own. And what I think is useful is once you kind of consider a few of these questions and get a bit closer to what kind of content type you might use, we did create a kind of rough categorization of some of the content types based by the modality, really, so that you know that if you do have a text-heavy site, content of subject rather, then you've got options like using the accordion, something called the documentation tool, the summary content item, and also it's kind of useful to see, for instance, there's the option of having a 360-degree image. And then that combination option at the bottom is just about if you have, if you want to use images, text, audio, visual, video, kind of a bit of everything, then those options under that category really let you kind of have a bunch of things all in the one content item, whereas the rest are kind of separate, really quite specific items on their own. But I would say that really does wrap up what we have today for you. Like the ending there for the grand finale. So if you have any questions or comments, or maybe you want us to build another example, we have a little bit of time. It's up to you. I don't know. What do you think? Oh, good. Yeah, if you want to go off early, it's always useful to have a bit of extra time. So no problemo, but we can hang around as well. Kate and I will be here. Otherwise, feel free to toodaloo, toddle off. There's also, just leave that screen up there because we've got our resources site. You can lodge a Service Connect ticket with us if you want to talk about this more or have some help building it. Our live chat as well on the website. We have heaps of events coming up. Awesome. Seems like it was pretty handy, and we'll be sending out those the slide notes to you as well, so that you can have a reference to any of the links that you want to see. Awesome. If you ever have technical problems as well in Canvas, there's the built-in Canvas chat support, or you can even call them up